everybody. Today we're going to be reading chapters 11 and 12 from Sideways Source from Wayside School. Chapter 11. Dana. Dana had 4 beautiful eyes. She wore glasses, but her eyes were so beautiful that the glasses only made her prettier. With two eyes, she was pretty. With 4 eyes, she was beautiful. With 6 eyes, she would have been even more beautiful. And if she had 100 eyes all over her face and her arms and her feet, why she would be the most beautiful creature in the world. But poor Dana wasn't covered from head to foot with beautiful eyes. She was covered with mosquito bites. Mrs. Jules picked up her yardstick and said, "Now it's time for arithmetic." "Oh no, Mrs. Jules," said Dana. "I can't do arithmetic. I itch all over. I can't concentrate." "But we have all kinds of arithmetic," said Mrs. Jules. "Addition without caring, addition with caring, and caring without addition." "I don't care," cried Dana. We have that too," said Mrs. Jules. "Addition without caring. Now stop carrying on." Dana whined. "I can't, Mrs. Jules. I itch too much." "And I'm too thirsty," said DJ. "I'm too tired," said Ron. "I'm too hungry," said Terrence. "I'm too stupid," said Todd. Mrs. Jules hit her desk with her yardstick. Everyone stopped talking. Mrs. Jules said, "We are going to have arithmetic now, and I don't want to hear another thing about it." "But Mrs. Jules, I really do itch. I can't do arithmetic," Dana whined. "No," said Mrs. Jules. "Arithmetic is the best known cure for an itch. How many mosquito bites do you have?" "I don't know," said Dana. "Over 100. First I try scratching one, but then another one starts to itch, so I have to scratch that one. And then that one stops and another one starts, so I scratch that one. And then the itch moves down to another one, then it goes back to the first one. The itch just never stays in the same place. I just can't scratch them all." "What you need is a good strong dose of arithmetic," said Mrs. Jules. "I'd rather have calamine lotion, said Dana. "Remember, Dana," said Mrs. Jules, "mosquito bites itch, not numbers." "So what?" said Dana. Mrs. Jules continued, We'll just have to turn your mosquito bites into numbers." "I'm a mess," Dana moaned. Mrs. Jules began to turn the mosquito bites into numbers. "How much is 3 mosquito bites plus 3 mosquito bites?" she asked. Rondai raised her hand. 6 mosquito bites," she answered. "How much is 6 mosquito bites minus 2 mosquito bites?" said Mrs. Jules. 4 mosquito bites," said DJ. "How much is 5 mosquito bites times 2? asked Mrs. Jules. 10 mosquito bites," said BB. "Very good," said Mrs. Jules. "I still itch," Dana complained. "I've got one more question," said Mrs. Jules. "How much is 49 mosquito bites plus 75 mosquito bites?" Nobody raised a hand. "Think, class," said Mrs. Jules. "This is for Dana." Nobody knew the answer. Dana's itch began to get worse and worse. At last, Dana began counting her own mosquito bites. She counted 75 on one side and 49 on the other. Then she added them together for a total of 124 mosquito bites. 124 mosquito bites, Dana called. "Very good," said Mrs. Jules. Dana had 124 mosquito bites, and none of them itched anymore. "I'm still thirsty," said DJ. "Can arithmetic do anything for that?" "I'm still tired," said Ron. "I'm still hungry," said Terrence. I'm still stupid, said Todd. I'm glad we turned my mosquito bites into numbers instead of letters, said Dana. I could never spell mosquito. Chapter 12. Jason. Jason had a small face with a big mouth. He had the second biggest mouth in Mrs. Jewell's class, and there were an awful lot of big mouths in that class. Mrs. Jewell's, Jason called out without raising his hand. Joy is chewing gum in class. Joy had the biggest mouth in Mrs. Jewell's class, and it was filled with gum. There was hardly even room for her tongue. Joy, I'm ashamed of you, said Mrs. Jewells. I'm afraid I'll have to put your name on the board. That's okay, Mrs. Jewells. That's okay, Mrs. Jewells, Jason called out. I'll do it. Jason hopped out of his seat and wrote Joy's name on the blackboard under the word discipline. While he was up, Joy took the glob of gum out of her mouth and placed it on Jason's chair. Rondi and Allison giggled. Jason walked back from the blackboard to his desk and sat down. Mrs. Jewells, he called, I'm stuck. Rondi and Allison giggled again. Mrs. Jewells got angry. Joy, you're going home on the kindergarten bus today. Oh, good, said Todd. I'll have some company. Todd went home on the kindergarten bus every day, but he could never seem to make it to 12 o'clock without getting into trouble 3 times. His name wasn't even up on the blackboard yet, but he knew that by 12 o'clock it would be up, checked, and circled. Mrs. Jewells, what am I going to do? I'm stuck. I'm going to have to stay here for the rest of my life, said Jason. Joy, tell Jason you're sorry, said Mrs. Jewells. I'm sorry, Jason, said Joy. Oh, that's okay, Joy, said Jason. I don't mind. Try to get up, Jason, said Mrs. Jewells. Jason tried. I can't, Mrs. Jewells. I'm stuck. Mrs. Jewells asked the 3 Erics to help. Eric Fry and Eric Ovens pulled Jason. Eric Bacon held the chair. Stop, cried Jason. You'll rip my pants. Rondi and Allison giggled. All right, said Mrs. Jewells. Let's try ice water. That should freeze the gum and make it less sticky. I'll go get some from Mrs. Mush. Mrs. Mush was the lunch teacher at Wayside School. She had the remarkable ability to undercook a dish and overcook it at the same time. Her specialty was a nice hot bowl of mud. She called it porridge. Jason looked at Rondi and Allison. No, Mrs. Jewells, he said. Don't leave me. Besides, Mrs. Mush's ice water is probably warm. Don't be silly, Jason, said Mrs. Jewells. I'm sure it will be at least as cold as her soups. Rondi and Allison leered at Jason. No, Mrs. Jewells, don't go, begged Jason. I'll be right back, Jason, said Mrs. Jewells. She went to Mrs. Mush for some ice water. As soon as Mrs. Jewells stepped out the door, Rondi and Allison jumped up from their seats and started to tickle Jason. He laughed until his hair turned purple. The girls got back to their seats just as Mrs. Jewells returned. Mrs. Jewells carried a big bucket of ice-cold water. Oh, no, please don't. Oh, no, please don't. No, Jason pleaded. We have no choice, said Mrs. Jewells. She threw the water all over him. Well, said Mrs. Jewells, try to get up. Jason was drenched. I'm wet, and I'm cold, and I'm still stuck. Oh, well, it didn't work, said Mrs. Jewells. At least we tried. Now I guess we'll have to cut your pants off. Rondi and Allison giggled. No, Mrs. Jewells, no, Jason screamed. I don't mind being stuck here. I'm really comfortable. Don't be silly, Jason, said Mrs. Jewells. Don't cut off my pants, said Jason. The 3 Erics will carry you to the bathroom, said Mrs. Jules. I'll ask Lewis to call your mother. She can bring you a new pair of pants. The 3 Erics took hold of Jason's chair and turned him upside down. No, Mrs. Jules, said Jason. Now I'll always have a place to sit down, and I won't have to worry about finding a seat on the bus. The 3 Erics began to take him away. Wait, said Joyce and Mrs. Jules. If I can get Jason unstuck, do I still have to go home on the kindergarten bus? All right, said Mrs. Jules. If somehow you can get Jason free, you don't have to go home early. Don't trust her, Mrs. Jules, said Jason. He was still hanging upside down. I'll just kiss him, said Joy. No, Jason screamed. Don't let her kiss me, Mrs. Jules. Throw water on me, tickle me, cut off my pants, hang me upside down from the ceiling, but don't let her kiss me. I'll just kiss him on the nose, said Joy. We've got nothing to lose, Jason, said Mrs. Jules. Who would want to kiss Jason, said Allison. Jason hung helplessly upside down. Joy stepped up and kissed him on the nose. Jason fell out of the chair and hit his head on the floor. Rondi and Allison giggled. Darn, said Todd. Now I have to go home alone again. Joy erased her name from the blackboard. Well, that'll be it for today, everybody. Please like and subscribe. And if you have any ideas of books that you want me to read, please leave it in the comments below. And see you all later. Bye.